Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Vivian, and today we're going to look at 5 common mistakes that people make when they hang their curtains and how you can fix them. These are all very common mistakes that you probably already know, but I know that I didn't know them up until a few years ago, and when I read them, I was just amazed at how much of a difference fixing these mistakes actually made in my own rooms. If you correct these mistakes, it's very likely that you're going to make your windows look bigger, you're going to allow more light to enter your room, and you're going to make your ceilings look higher, and those are all pretty positive things. First, let's talk about curtain rods. The first mistake is, are you hanging your curtain rod too low? You probably already know this, but the height and the width that you hang your curtain rod is going to make all the difference in the final look and outcome of your drapes. Raising your curtain rod will draw the eye up naturally. It will make your windows look taller, and it will even give the illusion that you have higher ceilings. So the general rule in terms of what height to hang your rod is about halfway to 2/3 up between the top of your window frame and your ceiling. If you have crown moldings, you can hang it about 3/4 of an inch below your crown molding if you want to go for even more impact. Keep in mind that if you have a lot of space between the top of your window frame and your crown molding, it might look a bit weird to hang your rod so close to the molding. So use your own discretion and see what works best. Mistake number 2, again, is a rod mistake, and it is having a rod that is too narrow. Ideally, you want to make sure that your rod is about 4 to 6 inches wider than the outer frame of your window. Make sure you're not suffocating your windows by having a rod that's too narrow. Ideally, when your curtains are open, they're going to be gathered in front of the wall that is on either side of your window. And then just the edges of your drapes are going to overlap the edges of your window. This will visually make it appear as if you have larger windows than you do. If your rod is too narrow and your drapes hang in front of your window, it's going to block the light and the window is actually going to look much, much smaller. Okay, so now we're going to talk about mistakes related to the curtain panels themselves. Mistake number 3 is buying curtain panels that are not wide enough for your windows. So what this means is when your curtains are open or closed, they just don't look luxurious. And so the way you can fix this is by purchasing panels that are 1.5 times to 2 times the width of your windows. So for example, if you have a 4-foot window, you'll get a panel that is 6 to 8 feet wide. This will ensure that when your curtain panels are open or closed, they'll always have a very nice gathered look to them. Okay, so mistake number 4 is purchasing curtain panels that are too short. Don't do this. Short curtains don't look good. There are typically 4 curtain lengths that interior designers revert to. They are called the following: the kiss, the puddle, the break puddle, and the float. We're going to look at all of those now. To have your curtains kiss the floor is probably the hardest method to pull off, but it also looks the most tailored and custom. You need to be incredibly accurate in your measurements in order to get this right. If your curtains kiss the floor, they're literally hovering perfectly on the surface of the floor. To accomplish this, you need to measure the exact distance from the top of the curtains to the floor. A tip to do this accurately is to hang the curtains on the rod and mark or pin them while they're already hanging. The puddle length is by far the most dramatic of all the ways to hang curtains, and it's the one that's the most tedious to keep clean. To achieve the puddling effect, add an extra 2 to 4 inches beyond the floor to your panels. The break puddle length is kind of in between kissing the floor length and the puddle length. The panel doesn't hang straight like it does with the kissing the floor or the floating method, and the break adds a little bit of interest. The idea is that you add an extra 1/2 inch to 1 inch to the curtain length so that the panel breaks as it hits the floor. If you don't like the idea of your curtains touching the ground at all, then opt for hanging them just 1/2 inch above the floor. This is called the floating method. This gives an extremely clean look, although it is slightly less formal. Your curtains should hang perfectly straight with this method. Try not to go any higher than 1/2 inch off the ground though, or it will start to look like a mistake in your measurements. They're not super easy to pull off. You gotta be precise with your measurements, but it makes your room look so much more polished if you can hang your curtains in one of these 4 ways. I highly recommend it. Do not hang your curtains too short. It looks bad. Please. So if you're confused about what length you actually need in the room that you're decorating, first and foremost, I would suggest looking at the function of your room. Typically, if it's a formal room, you can go a bit longer with your curtains, and if it's an informal room, you tend to want to go a bit shorter. Formal rooms obviously tend to have a little less traffic, so you can go maybe for the puddle option, whereas bedrooms are a bit more informal, so you probably want to avoid long curtains unless you're going for a super romantic look, and then you'll probably want to go for the puddle option as well. Living rooms tend to be a combination of formal and informal, so you could probably go for the float or for the kiss in a living room. Mistake number 5 is excessive puddling. Short curtains are bad, but excessive puddling is almost just as bad. So we just talked about curtain lengths, and puddling is something that people tend to do, but if you overdo it, then it might not work so well. If you find excessive dust bunnies in your curtain pile, if people are tripping over your curtains, chances are your curtains are probably a little too long and your puddling situation has gone a bit overboard. You want to make sure that you stick to the guidelines that we talked about earlier and not overdo it, because otherwise it might look more of a mistake rather than an intentional puddling situation. So before I end this video, I just want to go over a few frequently asked questions that tend to come up a lot. How can I hem curtains without sewing? You can easily hem your curtains without sewing by using iron-on hemming tape. You can even do this when they're hanging directly on the rod. Just fold and pin the curtains to the length you want, then bring your ironing board over to the window and iron the hem. Remove the pins, use the iron-on hemming tape, and you're done. How do I hang curtains without drilling? Use command hooks. It may not be the most elegant solution, but it can work really well if you want to hang curtains but you're not able to drill holes in your wall. It's good for renters too. Make sure you double check the weight of your rod and curtains and buy the larger command hooks that will actually take a heavy load. You can also use a tension rod. How do I hang curtains from the ceiling? Sometimes people want to hang their curtains from the ceiling to create a divider to section off an area of their home, or sometimes people just want to hang the curtains as high as possible, and so you use the ceiling. It's actually very popular to do so. There's 3 ways you can hang your curtains from the ceiling. You can mount your rod brackets directly to the ceiling instead of on the wall. You can use a curtain track, or you can try the curtain wire system from IKEA. Any of these methods should work great. How do I hang curtains if I have baseboard heaters? I have more information about this on my website, so I recommend you go and check it out there, and I'll leave a link for you in the description below. But in a nutshell, basically the only heating system you really need to be careful with is with electric baseboards. Please be very careful about how you hang your curtains if you have electric heating in your home. And if you have any doubts whatsoever, talk to a professional. Thank you so much for making it through to the end. I really hope that you found some of these tips useful and that you can implement them in your own decor. If you did like it, please consider liking and subscribing and commenting. I appreciate it so much. It really helps me out and it makes Ziggy happy too, right? Thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Bye!